All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be discussing the gas giants. This is just a couple of the largest planets that we have in the solar system. Gas giants are Jupiter and Saturn, so these are the first two of the large planets. The other two are called ice giants. So a gas giant is mostly composed of hydrogen and helium. So by mass, it's 80%. That is quite a bit. On the flip side, ice giants, Uranus and Neptune, are composed mostly of heavier elements like oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, and carbon. And they are only 20% hydrogen and helium by mass. So that is the major difference, the amount of hydrogen and helium. So we'll start off talking about Jupiter. Some facts: it is the fifth planet from the Sun, and it is by far the largest in our solar system. It is approximately the width of 11 Earths. One day is about 10 hours, and a year is about 12 Earth years. So it takes approximately 12 of our years for the Jupiter to go around the Sun one time. As mentioned, it is made mostly of hydrogen and helium. It has a ring system, but it's very, very faint. It is very, very hard to detect the rings on Jupiter. There are over 92 moons, and that was just changed here this year when about a dozen new moons were discovered. It used to be second to Saturn in number of moons, but it has now passed up Saturn. We think that Jupiter has a solid rocky core, but it is not known for sure. The giant red spot is a massive storm. It's approximately the width of 2 Earths, and if you see the picture of Jupiter again, you will see this kind of reddish spot. It has been in existence for a long time. The planet is very large and has a very large magnetic field. It's approximately 14 times the strength of our magnetic field. Now, a couple things about moons, and we'll spotlight on the Galilean moons because they are the 4 most popular. There are about 92 moons, as mentioned. Collectively, they are called the Jovian system. And in addition to moons, the rings are divided into 3 segments, and they are made mostly of dust. That's why they're very, very hard to see. They're very faint. The Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, these were discovered in about 1609 by Galileo. He saw them orbiting the planet, and this really changed things for astronomy because that really, pushed forward the whole model of things orbiting other things. Ganymede is the largest moon in the solar system, and it's larger than the planet Mercury, but because it's in orbit around another planet, it's considered a moon. Mercury is a planet because it's orbiting the sun. Io is the most seismically active in the solar system. It has over 400 active volcanoes, and we've seen them actually erupt with one of the spacecraft that was going by. The most distant Galilean moon from Jupiter is also Callisto. So Callisto is the furthest away, and it is almost as big as Mercury. It is about 99% the diameter. Europa potentially has liquid water under its icy surface, and that's due to tidal flexing, which means it's being pulled by the planet of Jupiter, and it's being flexed a little bit, so kind of squished and then stretched, and that can cause the water to stay liquid form underneath the planet or underneath the surface. So moving on to Saturn. A few facts about Saturn: it is the 6th planet from the Sun. It has it's the second largest in the solar system. It is about 9 times the diameter of the Earth. So while that seems pretty close to Jupiter, it's actually quite a bit smaller than Jupiter. And again, it's mostly hydrogen and helium, about 80%. A day is about 10.7 Earth hours, so pretty similar to Jupiter. And one Saturn year is 29.4 Earth years. So even though it's the next planet out, it has a very, very long orbit. So 29 and a half Earth years. It has about 83 moons. The ring system is extremely bright and very well defined, and that's what we know Saturn for. It has 7 rings with different divisions. They're made up of mostly ice and rock. The North Pole has a very, very strange feature. It has a 6-sided jet stream. So when you look at Saturn from the top, it looks like there's a hexagon on top of it. The magnetic field strength is second only to Jupiter, and it has a tilt of about 27 degrees. That's why when we see pictures of it, we often see it tilted about, almost a third of the way. It's a little bit more tilt than Earth. We're about 23 degrees. This is a picture of the rings, and you can actually see different gaps in the rings. You can see different brightnesses in the rings. They're very different. They're composed mostly of ice with some trace amounts of rock, and they are very, very small. the majority are very small, although there are some big chunks going around too. They were first observed also by Galileo just after he discovered the moons of Jupiter. Huygens was the first to realize they were rings, because when Galileo first saw them, he didn't know what they were. He thought there was a weird bulge in the middle of the planet. It turns out that they were actually rings. So Huygens first described them as a disk, and they kind of do look like a disk. It kind of looks like a record. The diameter of the rings extend about 50,000 miles from the equator of Saturn. The gaps have been created by orbiting moons. So some of those wider gaps that you see are because there's a moon clearing out that orbit around the planet. The largest gaps, Cassini and Encke, have thousands of thin gaps. So there are a lot of thin gaps, and those are the two really wide. The most distant ring, the Phoebe ring, orbits backwards and is aligned with the orbital plane of Saturn. So there's actually a ring that's way further out, and it is going the wrong direction. It's a very strange thing. So some of the moons, there are about 83, from tiny to one being larger than Mercury. That would be Titan. 24 moons are regular, meaning they share the same equatorial plane. So they're kind of orbiting along that same plane as where the rings are, and they go the same direction as the planet. But there are 59 moons that are irregular, with orbits outside the plane, and some orbit backwards. So not only are they not in the same plane as the rings, but they are also going the wrong direction. They're going around the planet the other way. Titan is the second largest moon in the solar system. It's also larger than Mercury. It's very dense, very cold, and it has an atmosphere of nitrogen and methane. It has a very young surface because they think there's volcanism going on the surface, and there's some weathering. That's due to the atmosphere that it has. It might have lakes in the surface, and if it does, they would be made of methane and ethane. So those on Earth are very flammable, but up there, because they don't have oxygen in the atmosphere, they are not. There's possibly an ocean of water mixed with ammonia. It's strange to think that the ocean they would have would actually be a very good cleaning product here on Earth. Water and ammonia, very good for cleaning. So that is the end of the discussion today on both Saturn and Jupiter.